Hi, I'm Demetria, and you're listening to Soul Podcasting. This is a podcast where I share weekly insights, advice, and support for new and veteran podcasters. I'm your Impact Podcast Coach, and I'm here to inspire and motivate you to launch and grow your podcast and to make an impact on your community. You're listening to episode number 6. I'm so excited to be back, you guys, on this January 2023. It's really an exciting time to be alive and to be healthy and just to be grateful for what is in store for the upcoming year. So I'm really excited. I can't wait to share more with you guys. And Happy New Year. I hope that you had a blessed, beautiful, prosperous, and relaxing holiday season. I really hope you did. I hope you stayed safe, and I hope that you enjoyed yourself with your family and friends. So if my voice sounds a little bit different on this episode, it's because I'm trying out the Blue Yeti microphone that I just got yesterday. And so it's my first time using it, and I really like it so far. I had been using a Shure SM58 for the past decade. Really enjoy that microphone. We'll go back to it from time to time, but I just wanted to try out this Blue Yeti and see the difference in the audio quality. Well, today I want to talk about how to build a tribe for your podcast. And the reason I feel like it's important to talk about that is because when you're building a podcast, many times you may feel that you're out here all by yourself, talking to nothing and no one. You're going to feel sometimes that you're out here in space, talking into a vortex, into a black hole of nothingness. Unless someone responds and replies to you and says, "Hey, I really enjoyed that podcast." Then without feedback, it can be difficult to continue podcasting, continue the journey, because it can feel very isolating. And that's one of the issues within the podcast community that I've seen, and I've talked to quite a few of us out here, and we all feel the same sometimes. It's a little different creating a community and a tribe when you're podcasting as opposed to, for example, starting a YouTube channel. So if you're able to create content that your viewers actually want to see, they're very likely going to respond, reply, leave a comment. And sometimes it takes a little while to build up to that. But once they do, and once the community engagement catches on, it's a wonderful feeling to continue making those videos. I know from experience how it feels to not have a single reply on your video or many videos, or to have several replies to the point that you're having to reply back to everyone just so that you don't miss anybody. And I love that feeling the most. When it comes to podcasting, it's a little bit different because your viewers can't see you and you don't see them. And so if they're going to leave a comment, it's more than likely going to be in the Apple Podcasts platform where they're leaving a rating or a review. And it's just not the same as that feedback you get when you're doing a YouTube video or something like that, or maybe a blog post. So on this episode, I'm going to share some ideas that can help you to build out your tribe and start receiving a bit more comments, replies, feedback. It's going to help you to feel that you should continue along this podcasting journey. So the first thing is to become the leader that your listeners are looking for. And that's a very simple thing, but it's very complicated also. It's simple because you have begun your podcast because you obviously have content that you want to share and that you feel that you have some expertise in, and your listeners are looking to you for those particular answers. And that's why they're subscribed to your podcast. It's why they look forward to your episodes when you release them. So just becoming that leader is really as simple as you taking that step to create your podcast. So what you're doing as a leader is you're offering answers, you're creating solutions for your listeners, and you're offering hope. You want to give them the idea that they too can do whatever it is you're encouraging them to do, and that there is hope that you can help them in some way, either through the podcast or in addition to the podcast, maybe you're offering services and products to help them. But your purpose in creating the podcast is to help your listener to find those solutions that they're looking for. The second thing is to guide your listeners through their journey to their next steps. In my digital products course that I created last year and launched, I was teaching how to guide your subscriber, your customer, your client through a series of steps that leads them from point A to point Z. And in between, there's a journey. So as their leader, it's your job to lead them through the series of steps that they'll need to take in order to come to the final destination that you want them to arrive at. So you're helping your listeners to get through their journey, taking all those steps, and you're leading them and they're following you. So whatever you say is going to help them to find that solution, help them to solve their problems. It's going to help them to take those baby steps toward their destination. They need a guide, and you are that guide. So that's what your podcast is there for, to guide your listeners through the series of steps that will help them to come to their final conclusion. And you don't have to give all of your resources away on your podcast. Most of what you're going to be doing will be done through your coaching programs or your products, your services. So you don't have to give it all away. But when you do show up on your podcast, you want to give valuable information. So make sure that you are essentially solving their problems in some capacity. So the third thing is to create community. And this is how you're going to actually build that tribe. You're going to use your social media. So if you're using Instagram, then you're really going to deliver on Instagram. And that's where you're going to hang out, spend a lot of your time, and make connections through Instagram. If you're choosing to make those connections on Facebook, then let that be where you spend a lot of time. Find your community of people where your listeners are likely going to be hanging out, and spend time there so that you can cultivate relationships with people and hopefully get them interested in what you're doing with your podcast. Another way to create community is to build your membership site. So one thing that I'm working on right now is making a decision between whether or not I want to begin a membership site, or if I want to simply do what my third option is, which is to create a Patreon page. And so that's the third thing I was going to share with you that you can do to create community. So I'm deciding between a membership site and simply starting with a Patreon page to begin with, and then moving from there to something more robust. So I think that's actually what I may end up doing, but we'll see as I make that decision. But those are things that you can think about doing. A Patreon page is really just going to give your listener an opportunity to support you financially while they invest in what you're doing and they support you. So you're going to feel some sense of community and support through your Patreon. So I really think that I will probably very likely head down that direction pretty soon. And then after the Patreon page, I may end up at some point creating a full-fledged membership site. I'm not quite ready for that yet, but if that's where you are in your business or in your organization, then creating a membership site outside of using socials like Facebook groups and such. If you have your own membership site, then you're very likely going to be able to keep in touch with your listeners more frequently, and just have more of an ability to manage what that membership site feels like and the things that you actually want to accomplish within that group. So those are some ways that you can build out a tribe for your podcast, because you want to make sure that as you're podcasting, you don't feel like you're left out here on your own to just come up with content and not hear anything back or not receive any type of feedback or support. So creators deserve to receive support for the work that we put out. So as we're creating these resources and putting out content, there's absolutely nothing wrong with asking for support from our listeners. And so I encourage you to do that as I start doing the same. I haven't done it as much. I've Every once in a while, I will ask for support, but mainly I've been using my podcasts to sell my services and to sell my coaching and my products. So that is the way that I've been kind of creating some sense of community. One of my bigger podcasts, which was my Christian Homeschool Moms podcast, is where I was able to build the most community over the years. And it's just that particular niche gave me an audience that was a lot more receptive to wanting to communicate, collaborate, and get together and have meetings. So we would meet online and we would chat with each other. Within that community, there tends to be a lot more summits, just more of a feeling of collaboration online as we homeschool moms were getting together to encourage each other in what we're doing as teachers and as moms. So that community led to a very vibrant type of networking and collaboration. So building a community there was a little bit easier for me, I would say, than some of the other projects I've worked on. So it's just something to think about. As you build out your podcast, how are you going to engage your listeners? How are you going to create community? And how are you going to set up your podcast in such a way that you feel that you are honored for the work that you're doing and that you give your audience an opportunity to support you in some fashion? So that said, as I've been thinking about creating this Patreon page, I've also been thinking about items that I could drop ship, that I could create so that my listeners would have an opportunity to support me in a variety of ways, purchasing mugs and t-shirts and those kinds of things that would be helpful to them and help them to remember what it is that I'm doing for them and vice versa. So we can all just kind of feel connected. And so that's one of the things I'm working on for my homeschool podcast. And eventually I'm going to have some things like that happening at this podcast and also at my other ones, Her Business Elevated and Mompreneurs and Heels. So what are you working on? I would love to hear about some of the things that you're planning to do to create community and build your tribe. That's all I have for you this week. I hope that you've enjoyed the content. I want to invite you to come on over to impactpodcastcoach.com if you're interested in starting your own podcast and need just a little bit of advice, support, and maybe some encouragement along the way. You can come visit me. And when you land on the homepage of Impact Podcast Coach, there is an option for you to book a 20-minute consult. That is absolutely free to you. Just click on that and book a time with me and we can chat. And I'll be happy to sit down, meet with you in Zoom and have a conversation with you. And we can chat about what your next steps are, what you're thinking about doing and how to get you from point A to point B. And then from there, if you and I are a good fit, we may even be able to work together. So that would be awesome. I am opening up my schedule as I speak. So I have my scheduling happening on the back end and I've got to free up a couple more places for you. So if you're having any trouble at all scheduling a time on that calendar, go ahead and contact me in another way. You can use the contact form. You'll find all that information on the contact page of impactpodcastcoach.com. And so if that is something that you're interested in and you can't seem to get the calendar to work just right, please stop by and just leave a message for me on the contact page. So that's all I have for now. And I am looking forward to talking with you next week where I'll share more information about podcasting. And I hope that I'm encouraging you to get started with that first podcast or that I'm encouraging you somehow to keep going with the podcast that you're working on now and not to give up because you are encouraging people with your project. So keep on keeping on. And until next time, happy podcasting.